You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Catholic Mama podcast. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Thanks for joining me on this episode where I'm actually sharing a radio show that I was on earlier this week. It's called Hands-On Apologetics, hosted by my friend Gary Michuta. You can find that show, as well as many other amazing radio shows that are really, really fascinating and really have voices from all walks of life over on Virgin Most Powerful Radio. So I'll put the link in the show notes. I highly recommend that you go, if you aren't a listener of Virgin Most Powerful, give them a look-see and check out all of the programs that they have throughout the day. Gary is on every day, every weekday, at 10 a.m. Pacific, so 1 p.m. Eastern. Or, hey, why not? If you're on Central Time where I am, it's 12 o'clock. Anyway, so I was on the other day, and we talked about New Age and the spiritual but not religious movement, kind of setting terms. What does that mean? What is New Age? Do they have any, fundamental belief systems, beliefs across the entire movement? Because it's kind of jumbled up. And I'm saying this as somebody who used to be really, really heavily into New Age. It's funny because as I was doing research leading up to this radio show, I came across this wonderful document on the Vatican's website from a pontifical council that had been convened to discuss what New Age is and why, as Catholics and Christians, we should care about it, and why we can't just think that it's innocuous or ignore it, because it really is pervasive. But it's kind of funny because when I was a New Age person, I was very narcissistic, and I was like, well, I believe this because I've been given special knowledge from the universe. Nobody else knows it. Well, my goodness, I was going through, and they had bullet points of summing up New Age knowledge and belief, and everything I believed was just, in a bullet point. So I was not special in my beliefs, is what I'm trying to say here. It's pretty funny to listen or to realize this. So I'm sharing this episode that I did with Gary. I hope you enjoy it. Again, his show is called Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Michuta. I'll put the link in the show notes. If you have any questions about New Age, or if there's parts of this episode as you're listening that you would like me to explore a little more, I really would like to do that. And, so send me a note, either on thecatholicmama.com. There's a contact form page there. You can do that. You can reach out to me on Instagram at @thecatholicmama. Or, as you'll see in the show notes as well, I've put a link to a Google form that you can just shoot off a message or a question or topic or whatever to me there, and I will see it. All right. I really hope you enjoy this episode. I certainly enjoyed talking to Gary about my past as a New Age religious or spiritual but not religious so-and-so. All right, everyone, enjoy.
And welcome back, everybody, at Hands-On Apologetics. And we're talking about this growing segment of the population known as the spiritual but not religious category, and really how it's been influenced by New Age thought and the New Age movement. And to kind of help clarify, that strange mixture of beliefs, we have with us Christine Flynn. By the way, Christine is the Catholic Mama. She's the wife and mother of four, wife of Pat Flynn, mother of four. She's a convert to the faith. Christine's podcasts and blogs are all about Catholicism to help fellow parents feel more sure about their faith and raise confident Catholic children. You can head to her website, which is thecatholicmama.com, all one word. And by the way, once you get there, you can grab a free ebook, which is How to Talk to Your Kids About God, which helps parents answer tough theological questions simply and truthfully. And Christine, welcome back to Hands-On Apologetics.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's always a joy to have you on board. And, how are things going at the Flynn household?
You know what? We're doing okay. I was just thinking that any chance I can get to go in a room by myself and talk to another adult is just pure joy. especially right now. So, yeah, this is great. But we're doing okay. You know, thankfully, because we do a lot of online stuff anyway, and we homeschool, our day-to-day life has stayed pretty on par with what it was.
Okay, good. So, yeah, not too big of an interruption.
Not yet. We'll see. Who knows? Every day brings something new, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I hear what you say about escapability. That was one of those features when we were looking for a house. One of the things we were looking for is where can we go to get away when we need to? So I totally appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, where we used to live, we had a third floor finished attic, but it didn't have central air, and there was no way to get, the window was too small for a window unit, an air conditioning unit. So the attic was unusable for half the year. Now we have a nice, quiet space that we can go to any time of the year to get away if we need to.
There you go. Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about your past. You were on, I think once before, maybe more, but just to bring people up to speed, tell us a little bit about your journey of faith.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in, I always want to say this, a very loving household, but it was definitely anti-religious, at least anti-organized religion. There was certainly a bias towards that. My parents are both fallen away Catholics. And my dad's more on the skeptical front. You got to show me. And my mom trended towards New Age. And, being with my mother a lot, I just picked that up as well. And it just spoke to, finding that inner goddess and that joining yourself to a divine spark or whatever the jargon is, just really resonated with me over time, feelings based. So, I just wound up moving from a general acceptance that there was a creator when I was pretty young to feeling like, I am God, God is me, it's the universe, we're all joined. And, that progressively, it sounded all nice and seemed very accepting on the outside of other people's journeys and where they were. But over time, it made me quite narcissistic and withdrawn. I'm an introvert by nature. So it really enabled me to keep people away, which was a very comfortable place for me. But eventually, there are problems in this world, either personal tragedies or global ones. And I started really feeling the effects of the problem of suffering and evil, and that my religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs didn't offer a really good explanation for that. It just wasn't satisfying over time. And I wound up just going to a point of despair and eventually eschewing any religious or spiritual beliefs, and there was just nothing, and became a very unhappy atheist. It wasn't until I had my own children and really saw the love that I had for them that it couldn't just be that there was nothing and that this is all just happenstance and chaotic. But I just became really hopeful that maybe there was something more that could explain the love that I felt for my children, and that at the end of our lifetimes, it wouldn't just end in a poof. And that happens to be Catholicism. And so Pat, my husband, who's been on your show many times, he was going through his own conversion, and he was taking a more philosophical route. But, a lot of my beliefs were feelings based, and I needed to see that there was a good, I was a little burned by all that feeling stuff, and I needed to see hard historical facts and get I needed to know that it was logical, because I was just so, like I said, burned by the feelings based stuff of the New Age and spiritual but not religious beliefs that I had held before. And I was able to find out that Jesus actually is a historical figure, that he is God and man. And it all just came together. And I spent a long time searching, a lot of questions that I felt that I just was going to spend the rest of my life looking for answers for. And thank God, literally, that that's not the case. And I found a lot of very satisfying answers in the faith.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so I guess before we begin, we should probably define in fact, somebody in the chat room, I think it was M. Mousepel, said, what spiritual but not religious, what does that mean? What is spiritual but not religious?
Yeah, I think you can probably use New Age or spiritual but not religious interchangeably in a lot of cases. A New Age just might sound a little too woo-woo, or maybe just out of vogue now, because you see a lot of, a Pew Research study will go out and a lot of people will check that spiritual but not religious box. And that really means that they are open to some higher power, some energy, life force of the universe, and believes that we're probably all connected to it in some way. But as far as an organized patriarchal religion goes, no thanks for them. They'll just have more of a personal experience of the divine.
Yeah. When New Age movement was just getting off the ground, I remember going to a huge chain bookstore, and they had a shelf. It was listed as metaphysics. And
interesting.
For a title, it was like, this isn't metaphysics. This is UFOs and all sorts of weird stuff. And but it was only later that they started labeling it New Age. So it was kind of like New Age didn't want to have a label. It wanted to kind of be more of a philosophy.
Yeah. Which philosophy and psychology are both play heavily into the New Age movement. And if you go to like a chain bookstore, it'll still say New Age. There'll be spirituality next to it. I don't think they've changed it to be spiritual but not religious yet on their titles. Or if you search for a book on Amazon, it'll come up as New Age will be that subgenre.
Yeah. So in your experience of those who would label themselves spiritual but not religious, how many of them do you think are actually New Agers that just don't want to be called New Agers?
I don't know, because you look at the numbers, and true atheists are pretty small. I mean, it's only a couple of percentages of the whole U.S. population when the studies come in. Mm-hmm. As far as the New Age, I would imagine. I mean, there's agnostics in there. New Age spiritual people, it's so difficult because it has infiltrated our society in so many ways that it's difficult, I think, to put an exact number on it. I was at the gym a few months ago, of course, before they closed their doors, and I noticed that on a Sunday morning, like smack in the time of the usual mass times, was a yoga workshop of finding your inner goddess that they were encouraging you to go for. And that all sounds well and good. Like, oh yeah, I need to tap into who I am as a woman or something like that. And I thought it was so interesting that it coincided with the time that, Christians would be going to church.
Yeah.
It's completely, it seems innocuous, but it really isn't. It's pulling us away from these long-held Judeo-Christian beliefs that have, are a good culture is really embedded, or that's the bedrock of a solid culture. Yeah. So, but it's difficult because you have so many Christians who may read their horoscopes or may feel like they can go find their inner goddess. So I don't know, like an exact number of somebody who would say, I am New Age, I'm raising my hand, I'm spiritual but not religious, and I believe that, I can communicate with some kind of my higher being in the spirit realm. I don't know the number of that. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, even in the New Age, my experience is most of them are dabblers. There's no strict definition of New Age thought. It's more of a collection of thoughts, and somebody one thing, and then another person could be in another thing, but they're still. It's just
it's a big umbrella term that has a lot of freedom in it, which is probably why it has taken such hold of our culture, the modern culture today, because it speaks to a lot of things that modern people value: autonomy, freedom. It not having to deal with some kind of more, personal experience rather than a set dogma. So these are things that we just value in our modern culture and minds anyway. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that we're going to, really go whole hog and embrace it and put it on a bumper sticker for us personally. But it really has infiltrated so many areas. And that's why we see such a growth in those spiritual but not religious people, because it sounds nice. Yeah, right. But it really is a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's it's very dangerous in that I think the most dangerous aspect of New Age thought is that it's fantasy-based. It's not reality-based. It's kind of whatever you can imagine is true,
Yeah, there's no way to test it.
As opposed to Catholicism,
Right.
The exact opposite.
Yeah. It's based on the actual historical figure of Jesus Christ, and we can verify that he existed and the events of his life happened. Mm-hmm. But with New Age, it really is just what your personal experiences are. a dream that you have is as valid as, the actual person of Christ in this thought process, which is just unreal.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes it very difficult to do apologetics with them because, sometimes even logic doesn't or reason doesn't work. It's how can you believe
it is so feelings based.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, again, we are heading or have headed into a culture that just. I feel that. I feel everything's feelings, which is great. I mean, we all have feelings, but you need to be able to base something in actual truth and reality. And it's pretty impossible to, and it's hard to argue against it, which, is a tough thing from an apologetic standpoint. But it also, there is hope there in that so many people are searching for answers. And I think I mentioned this the last time I was on your show. I went to a Stoic conference, and Dr. Kevin Vost, who is a Catholic convert, was there speaking about Stoicism and Catholicism. And during the Q&A session afterwards, so many people had questions about karma and reincarnation, and they were just struggling so much to make sense of their lives and the state of the world now. And all I could think of is, man, the answer to that question is Catholicism, and the answer to that question is Catholicism. But it's so difficult to say that without coming off across as being a jerk. But also to let them know that the answers are there and they want them. So we just have to join them up, but in the way that they, they're receptive to them, which is more feelings and emotion based.
Yeah, very good, very good. We're chatting with Christine Flynn, thecatholicmama.com. Check out her podcast. More to come on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. We're chatting with Christine Flynn about the spiritual but not religious movement, and also, about some New Age thought that kind of trickles into the movement. And so we talked about, what exactly does it mean when somebody says they're spiritual but not religious. I guess we should probably talk about what is New Age. Are there a couple of major tenets of New Age? Actually, you already kind of mentioned a few, like the inner goddess, that we're all God.
Right, yeah. So I would say it really starts off with that all life, I mean, not even just life, a rock, a wall, it's all part of one shared existence. We're all manifested of the same, universal spirit in a way. If you think of if a white sheet was put over the entire world, and you'd see, structures rise up out of it, but it's all the same sheet. So I think that probably encapsulates what the basis for the New Age thought is. And so we're all, part of that sheet, but there is that individual movement happening within it. And then we're also just all trying to ascend from this, the prison of our bodies, and to realign ourselves with that kind of multi-dimensional, behind the veil existence that we all have. Because there is, we have this divine spark that we are trying to fully realize in whatever form we are currently manifested in. Yeah. I think probably just that's where the basis of it. All the other beliefs kind of come from that, I think. Yeah,
I think so too. It's a rock is God. I should say divine. The tree is divine. I am divine. You're divine.
Right.
But the problem is, if I'm divine, then why can't I walk on water and perform miracles?
It's probably because you just don't believe enough. I actually remember reading that in a book of some kind of Easternish guru who said that, he can walk through walls and he can levitate. Of course, nobody's seen him do that. But if and you should be able to as well, if you fully believe that, you are one with the wall or one with the air, you should be able to levitate and walk through. And if you're unable to do that, you walk and you bump your head on the wall. Well, that's your fault for not believing enough. So it's always, the bar is always set just a little bit higher so you can't actually attain any of these things.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny that you would expect that the people writing the books can already do this stuff, but when push comes to shove, they maybe have a handful of people in history that have achieved that level, and of course one of them's Jesus Christ, which they don't follow, but they'll use and maybe quote him now and then.
Yeah, he's just one of many Christs. I think is what they believe. I remember I used to be a big fan of the singer-songwriter Jewel back in the day. And one of her songs, and when I was thinking about coming on your show and what we're going to talk about, I remember one of the lyrics was that we will all be Christed when we hear ourselves say that we are that to which we pray. So once we all figure out that we are God, we will become God. We will blossom into that. We just have to fully believe and understand and try to dive into those that metaphysical or spiritual dimension that we can't see now, but it's there. You just have to trust us.
Yeah. So it's pantheistic. Everything is God. But,
right.
Actually that lyric from Jewel, I think, is very perceptive in that. So if everything God, then everything is one. It's monistic.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly, the thing is, and I have New Agers, I never got a decent reply, is, well, if everything's God, who do you pray to? Are you talking to yourself?
Yeah. I remember years after, or a while after, because I'd given up all this stuff quite a long time ago. So I felt like it was, I started maybe thinking that, did I just imagine all of this? Mm-hmm. But years after, I was talking to my husband about it, and he's like, well, who put you in the prison? Like, why don't, the prison of your body, why don't you just free yourselves then? I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I never really thought about it. There's no straight answer. You're not going to get a straight answer.
Yeah, sure. So that's kind of, I guess the carrot on the stick is that you can achieve this divinity, but you have to dive deeper and deeper into New Age thought and fantasy, really, hoping to eventually attain this unattainable goal.
And if you don't do it in this life, well, you can have another try. Reincarnation figures heavily into this, and it's not the kind of reincarnation where you are eventually going to, poof out of existence because you've freed yourself from the cycle of suffering and samsara. It is just, you get to reincarnate again and try to, get closer and closer. So every time that you have a new life, you are refining and getting just a little bit closer to who you're really supposed to be.
Yeah. Now, what do they base this belief on for reincarnation?
I don't know. I mean, I think, I think it's really interesting, and possibly, some spiritual warfare is part of this, because the devil knows the past, and he can influence things in the present time. So, I remember years ago having dreams that seemed really, really real, and it was about past lives of mine, or what I perceived as past lives. And it wasn't until, relatively recently, I was like, well, clearly that wasn't true. But that doesn't mean I wasn't looking at somebody's life. It could have been planted there, in an act of spiritual warfare to make me think that this stuff was real. But I think, again, it's all subjective. And Carl Jung did a lot of work in trying to make sense of dreams in our consciousness and all this stuff. And, I think it's just we all dream every night. We have different dreams, whether we remember them or not. But if you put enough meaning into it, you might start thinking that you're seeing past lives. And yeah,
that's a really good point. Now, when you believed in reincarnation, was it like the Hindu system where, if you are against karma, you'll actually incarnate in a lower species, where if you're, with karma, then you kind of ascend? Or is it just always ascending?
Always ascending. Yeah. So it is a bit different. And you always get to my belief in reincarnation. And, it's funny, I started looking around on, what characterizes New Age belief. And actually, the Vatican put together, they did a council on New Age, which I thought was really interesting. And it's a lengthier document, it's about 70 pages. Mm-hmm. But they listed off some of the typical beliefs of New Age. And I thought for years that I was very special. Of course, again, there's a lot of spiritual narcissism in the New Age movement, or spiritual but not religious movement. And I thought that I had special knowledge, that I had seen behind the veil and all this stuff. And then I go and look, and the Vatican has it in like bullet points of all my beliefs. I was like, man, I'm not unique at all. I really thought I was something special. So, it's
that's funny.
Yeah,
so you were humbled by bullet points.
Yes. Look at that. I'm glad. After years of thinking that I really had some kind of special knowledge, it's good to have that happen. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Being humbled is a good thing.
It's interesting you point that out, because that is also a feature I've known over the years looking at the New Age movement, is this kind of narcissism where, of course, if you're God or you're divine, then why would you'd look naturally look down your nose on all the other people that, aren't aware of even their divinity.
Yeah, and of course, you as the follower of New Age have some esoteric knowledge that nobody else does, which means that you are farther along in your ascension, and you are going to get there faster, or whatever there is, than anybody else around you.
Yeah, and then there's the flip side belief that, that I'm the most noble and open-minded and all-embracing person around. It's a strange juxtaposition of narcissism, and then this idea that I am so all-embracing, where religious people aren't.
Right, which in itself is a very arrogant position to be in, that my religion is correct, my spirituality is correct, and your Catholic religion or whatever isn't. And so they wind up, I'm just calling the kettle black.
Yeah. And, for me, I think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to get people out of that mind science belief where, their identity is their belief. They kind of have to step off the throne of God and say, I am not God, to kind of do that. And, people normally wouldn't do that because they tied their whole personality into, this is who I am, it's what I am.
Yeah, very painful. Yeah. I'm not going to lie about that. This whole transformation, even when I started, coming out of atheism and started possibly looking at Christianity, I still tried to retrofit some of my old beliefs in. And I had a hard time. Even, I was like, well, maybe the stuff that I did believe all those years ago, I got away from it, but maybe there is some truth there. During our journeys, when Pat especially was starting to look at, get into more of the New Age stuff before he hit the philosophy route and went running that way. It looked at, Jesus is an archetype. There you can learn. So, each apostle wasn't a real person. They were just archetypes of who we are. And, who do you fit in with? It's like, take a quiz. Who are you most like type thing. Mm-hmm. And so but it doesn't work because one, these are real people, but it's a very painful process to try to get rid of all of this stuff and to realize how wrong I was. That's nobody wants to know that. Yeah. But it was, I'm glad I did it. And I'm glad that I took a hard look at the old beliefs and then, looked at Christianity and see it's just completely incompatible. You can't hold on to any New Age beliefs and still be, a real believer of a Christian. Yeah, very true, very true. I think we're coming up on the break, so we might not be able to hear your answer on this, so you can think about it. When you were telling your story, you mentioned how you became disenchanted with the New Age beliefs and were kind of pained by it. And then it was through that pain that you began to actually honestly look at whether God exists and so on. So maybe when we come back, if you wouldn't mind, maybe we could kind of investigate that. Like, what did you find so unsatisfying with your spiritual but not religious, New Age-ish kind of outlook? Sound good? Sounds good.
All right, very good. We're chatting with Christine Flynn of thecatholicmama.com, all one word, thecatholicmama.com podcast, and we're talking about being spiritual but not religious, and also the tie-ins with the New Age movement. Stay tuned, folks. Lots to come on the other side of the break. Listening Hands on Apologetics. And welcome back, everybody. We're chatting with Christine Flynn of the CatholicMama.com podcast, and we're talking about spiritual but not religious and the tie-ins with the New Age movement. And Christine, right before the break, I kind of set you up for the next question, which was, you mentioned when you were coming out of this mind thought, this system of thought, that some of the beliefs and tenets kind of wore on you. And, if you maybe explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, people in the New Age will do different things to try to, achieve some kind of higher knowledge of the hidden self. And for me, it was always dreams and dream interpretation, meditation, that sort of thing. And, the more I had a dream and I would try to interpret the dream, it seemed my dream life was very active. for a long time. And I was hooked to those feelings. I'd be excited to go to bed at night and see what I was going to dream that night. Yeah. And after a while, whether it was stress from school or work, or just, I was too tired and I didn't dream or something like that, the dreams slowly just stopped happening. And I would probably get more stressed about it. And the dreams, just really dwindled. It used to be, if you imagine you turn on the bathtub faucet and water gushes out. And by the end, it felt like maybe there was a drip here or there. Every few weeks, maybe I would get a dream and they seemed more silly than meaningful. And so I really felt abandoned by the universe. And it's very similar, though, if you have somebody who goes to church because they like the music or they like the way it makes them feel. Well, if the music changes or, somebody who's preaching they don't agree with and they get bad feelings from it, they're more likely to leave and try to find something else. And the same for me, those dreams stopped. I stopped getting those good feelings from my dreams and feeling like I was interconnected with some higher power. And so I started wondering, did I make all this stuff up? I did. Yeah. Spoiler, I did make it all up, but it was really jarring to me. And I felt like, well, maybe if I did make this up, what else that I believed? If I thought the dreams were real and they meant something, but they actually did and it stopped, I felt very betrayed. I was like, well, maybe this stuff isn't real anyway. So let me look at all my beliefs. And do I have good, again, I was only looking through the resources that I felt comfortable looking through, the dreams websites that I would go to or the authors or books that I was comfortable reading. And if they didn't have a good explanation for the problem of suffering, or if they didn't have a really good evidence that something existed besides this planet, maybe I'm just wrong about all of it. And now it's time to get rid of all of it as well.
Yeah. Very good. And with New Age, there's people who are into pyramids, people into UFOs, people into crystals, people into dreams like yourself, or so many different things, and usually I'll jump from one to another.
Because you can always.
We're fortunate.
Yeah. I guess I was. I would actually say, I don't believe in mistakes. So the idea of sin was just incompatible with the way I used to think. I don't believe in mistakes. If you learn from something that happened, that's not a mistake. That's just me progressing down my spiritual path. But it only gets you so far, because after a while, I started getting despondent and didn't have good answers. And those good feelings, all of it started to feel like maybe this was all a mistake.
Yeah. Did you come from the mindset that if something bad happened to you, that you actually willed it to be bad, or?
Yes. That was something that, I meant to say this because we were talking about reincarnation earlier. In my belief system, before you were born into the next life, you were given some kind of freedom to choose what happened, the big things. And then if deja vu happens in this life, that just means that you are doing something that you had seen before you were born and you were on your right path. And then if, you would get together with other spirits and you'd say, hey, let's get together in this next life and you'll be my kid and I'll be your best friend or you'll be my husband. And then we all go in together into this life. I forgot what was your question?
Yeah, about, causing bad things to happen.
That's right. Thank you. So we got to choose. We got to choose all of this ahead of time. So if anything happened, I chose it when I was more aware of the spiritualness of things. When I was more aware of that stuff, I chose the bad, and I just have to live through it now. And this will help me along in my path. And if something bad happens to somebody else because of me, well, that's just part of their path, and they chose it. Yeah. So if I was mean to them, or we dated and then I just disappeared and never talked to them again, well, that's just part of the path, and we all chose it. So you should have known better.
They literally asked for it.
Yeah, you literally asked for it. That's exactly right. So it became, I did a lot of damage with that kind of thinking, because, the bad stuff happens to me, but I didn't want to process the suffering, because suffering's tough. Nobody really wants, it's hard to deal with suffering. So when the bad stuff would happen to me, there was a big wall, didn't really want to process any of it. And then if I did anything unfeeling or mean or bad to somebody else, well, that's just part of the journey. So, deal with it. Very cold. I think, and again, I did a lot of damage when I felt that way.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most sinister aspects of New Age thought is that the victim is actually the perpetrator. So if you get raped, that's your fault. You brought it on yourself. It wasn't the rapist. And
for a belief system that is rooted in the idea that we're all interconnected and we're all part of this one giant spirit realm or whatever, it really is unfeeling that, we can do whatever we want. You wouldn't do that to yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Like how it just, for us, a belief system that prides itself on the interconnectedness of everything, it doesn't seem like that in practice.
Yeah, very good. And that's funny you say it's not feeling because, earlier you said, the driving force behind being spiritual, not religious, is feelings.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's like another contradiction.
It really is. I think it is just a bundle, just a big knotted mess of contradictions that if anybody tried to press me on any of this over time, I wouldn't have had a good answer as to why I believe this, but not this. And what about this special scenario? It just nothing would have fit, but it wouldn't have mattered because I'm on my journey and I'll understand it at some point. And you don't understand it because you're just a little farther down on your journey. You'll get there though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very good. And that explains a lot because you're right. Standard apologetic arguments, it's just like it bounces right off them. It's like, no, I'm supposed to teach you. You're not supposed to teach me. And
yeah. I know that there's a lot of, very popular, more new age authors, Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, there's a lot of those out there. I personally thought that I would probably had more knowledge than them. So I was so narcissistic, and the idea of ever looking at somebody else and believing and following them was just unreal to me. They may have been a good guide, but no thanks, I know best. Even better than, I guess, best-selling authors or something. I don't know. It's just, just a very, very, very arrogant position to be in. That does cause a lot of damage.
Yeah. So what kind of advice could you give Catholics who maybe they have friends who are in, maybe even family members? How do we pierce that layer of defense?
I still have family members who are really into New Age, and and also still, my skeptical dad. So I'm living on both ends, trying to figure this out myself. But I think for the New Age and what really, I have a couple of friends who are considering coming into the Catholic faith, but they still hold on to a lot of that. They want the personal spiritual experiences, and they don't think that the faith has it. Well, that's not true. Our Catholic faith, the saints, there's such a rich spirituality that it's not like in Eastern-ish or New Age meditation where we try to empty ourselves out and remain empty and get rid of any feelings of connectedness or dependence that we have on others and stay empty. In the Catholic faith, our prayer life, it's aimed at emptying ourselves out of, the sin and making room for God's love. And that can be it is a much more powerful experience than anything that New Age followers try to mimic in their own lives. So I think showing whether just offering resources on great Catholic saints who have had, those profound spiritual connections with God that are recorded would be an interesting place to start. And also just showing that I always used to think that the Catholic Church was a middleman to God. So they wanted to, they wanted to be the gatekeepers. And if you needed that, fine. If that's what you need and your weakness, go ahead, follow the Catholic faith or whatever. But I think if you can show that the Catholic faith is robust, it does encourage that kind of the prayer and communion with the Lord, that it isn't just this stodgy middleman. And it really, the church is there to bring souls to heaven and have that positive experience. I think that probably would go a long way. And of course, as always, living a joyful Catholic life, because I tried so hard when I was New Age to have the type of mindset and joy that I have now as a Catholic, but could never get. So I'm hoping that by living this, that people will just be curious as to why I am the way I am now, and I'll be more than happy at that point to tell them why.
Yeah, that's Wow, that's a fantastic point because, usually with people with coercive belief systems that the belief system says you should be happy and joyful, and they try to convince themselves they are, but deep down they know they're not,
Yeah.
and when you run into someone who's genuinely, joyful in the Lord, that could get the gears rolling,
Yeah, at least to start breaking down the misconceptions about the Catholic faith and who we are as Catholics. It's just playing the long game, as always with a lot of our evangelization. It's a long game, and it unfortunately, I don't think it can come at it with facts initially. Now, initially, if somebody had come with me at facts about the Catholic faith, like, oh, you're just too left-brained. You need to be more right-brained and be more feelings-based. If somebody had come to me as a Catholic when I was steeped into the New Age. But if we can start with experiences and proof that the Catholic Church embraces the saints and their personal communion and prayer life with God, I think that could go a long way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, Christine, man, the hour has flown. Where can our listeners go to check out all your awesome podcasts?
Well, you've done such a nice job of telling people already, so thank you. But again, it's thecatholicmama.com, MAMA for mama, all one word. I post most of my podcast episodes that I do on the blog there. So whether you listen to iTunes or on Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, all the usual spots, you can find the Catholic Mama podcast there. I put up 2 full-length episodes a week, as well as a Friday, about 10-minute episode or less, where I've been diving through the Catholic Catechism bit by bit each week.
Okay. Well, awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
All right.
Don't forget to head over to thecatholicmama.com to get your free copy of How to Talk to Your Kids About God. This handy little ebook will teach you how to broach the topic of God with your children, or how to respond to your kids when they want to talk about God, as well as give you answers to 7 of the trickiest questions about the faith that Christian parents face. You'll love the easy-to-understand grown-up answers, the pared-down but not talked-down answers you can share with your kids, plus recommended resources if you'd like to deepen your understanding of the topic. Get yours free at thecatholicmama.com.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.